There is one specific truth that a narcissist will never admit to you. It is a singular fact that they will spend their entire lives concealing behind a mask of charm, behind sudden bursts of rage, behind calculated periods of silence, and behind tears that only seem to fall when they serve a particular purpose. Here is that truth. The narcissist is not actually afraid of your anger. They are not intimidated by your tears or by your threats to finally walk away. They have already weathered all of those reactions 100 times before. So, what is the one thing that truly terrifies them? What is it that shakes the very foundation of their dark, internal world? It is the precise moment you stop reacting to them. It is the moment you finally see them clearly for who they are. The moment your eyes stop searching for their approval and start simply watching their behavior with detachment. Because in that exact instant, something they have relied upon for years begins to collapse. The illusion shatters, and whatever pattern of manipulation, control, and quiet domination has been sustained by your energy suddenly realizes that it is staring at someone it can no longer feed upon. That is the moment the narcissist begins to act in strange and very specific ways. And once you learn to recognize those behaviors, you will grasp something that most people never fully understand in their entire lifetimes. The narcissist was never the powerful one in the relationship. You were. They simply worked very hard to ensure you never discovered that for yourself. Before we go any further, take a moment to do something kind for yourself. If you have ever been manipulated, gaslit, or emotionally exhausted by someone who claimed they loved you, please follow this channel right now. Do not do it for me. Do it for your own growth. Because what we are about to discuss might fundamentally change the way you view every narcissist you have ever known. Most people fail to realize that narcissists do not function on love, logic, or even hate. They function on control. Control is their oxygen. It is the only thing that temporarily quiets the vast emptiness they feel inside themselves. And the primary way they obtain that control is by carefully studying you. They observe your deepest fears, your secret hopes, your past wounds, your loneliness, and your fundamental need to be understood. Then, they craftily position themselves as the ultimate solution to everything you have ever felt was missing in your life. That is the reason the relationship felt so magical in the very beginning. It was not genuine love, it was deep reconnaissance. They were mapping the landscape of your soul so they could eventually use that knowledge against you. And the moment you begin to heal, the moment you start to reclaim your sense of self, that map becomes useless and their power starts to wither. That is when their behavior begins to shift in ways that can feel almost unsettling to observe. Pay close attention here, because this aspect changes everything. When a narcissist senses that their grip on you is loosening, they do not respond with introspection or self-reflection. Instead, they respond with pure panic disguised as dominance. They might suddenly turn freezing cold or act overwhelmingly sweet without warning. They may pull away from you without offering a single word of explanation, or they might flood you with an intensity of attention you never asked for. They begin to start arguments over trivial matters. They dig up painful memories from the past. They accuse you of things that never occurred. They attempt to rewrite history right in front of you, fully expecting you to flinch, to doubt your own sanity, and to shrink back into the small, manageable shape they originally carved out for you. But when you refuse to fold, when you stay grounded, and when your gaze remains steady and calm, something deep inside them begins to unravel. This happens because their entire identity is dependent on your reaction. Without your emotional response, in a very real sense, they stop existing in the way they need to. Here's the part that people rarely discuss. The narcissist is not a strong person pretending to be weak. The narcissist is a profoundly frightened person pretending to be a god. Underneath the arrogance, the cruelty, and the cold, distant exterior, there is a scared child who never learned how to feel secure within their own skin. That is the root cause of why they feel such a desperate need to dominate others. It is why they need to humiliate, to be constantly admired, to be feared, to be obeyed, and to never be questioned. And when someone like you, someone who has dedicated themselves to the inner work, someone who has started to genuinely value their own worth, walks into their life and refuses to bow down, the narcissist experiences something akin to pure existential horror. For the first time, they are forced to confront the very thing they have spent their whole life running from: their own emptiness, their own perceived smallness, and their own deep-seated shame. And what happens next tells you everything you need to know. The first sign that a narcissist is losing their grip on you is sudden, irrational rage. This is not anger that makes logical sense. It is rage that erupts out of nowhere, completely out of proportion to the situation, and is often directed at something incredibly small. Perhaps it is a specific tone of voice you used, a slightly delayed reply to a text, a boundary you set with kindness, or a moment where you failed to laugh at their joke. That rage was never actually about what you did. It was about what you failed to provide for them. You did not give them the fear they wanted. You did not give them the submission they required. You did not give them the emotional supply they were accustomed to extracting from you. So they escalate. In their distorted mindset, if charm is no longer effective, then intimidation must be used. And if intimidation does not yield the results they want, then destruction becomes their final resort. The second sign is sudden withdrawal. This includes the silent treatment, the cold shoulder, the disappearing act, or the blank, empty stare from across the room. To someone who has not been trained to recognize this, it looks like simple indifference. But what is actually occurring inside them is the exact opposite of calm. They are actively punishing you. They are trying to make you feel invisible, abandoned, and desperate. They are testing to see whether that old, familiar wound inside you, the fear of not being loved, not being chosen, or not being enough, is still powerful enough to drag you back to them on your knees. And if you stay grounded, if you refuse to chase them, and if you do not break the silence first, you have just accomplished something that a narcissist simply cannot tolerate. You have demonstrated to them that their absence does not destroy you. That is a wound to their ego that they will carry for a very long time. But here is where the situation becomes even more intense. The third sign is blame shifting that takes on a theatrical quality. Suddenly, every single problem in the relationship is your fault. Every harsh word that left their mouth was your fault because you supposedly provoked it. Every lie they told was your responsibility because you did not trust them enough. Every act of betrayal happened because you did not love them in the correct way. This is not a genuine argument. This is a deliberate psychological operation. The narcissist is attempting to reinstall the old software of guilt, shame, and self-doubt back into your mind. Because without that software running silently in the background, you become unreachable. You become unbreakable. You become truly free. And freedom in someone they previously controlled is the one thing they cannot allow to exist in peace. The fourth sign is the smear campaign. When every attempt at internal manipulation fails, the narcissist turns their attention outward. They begin to talk about you to friends, family members, co-workers, and sometimes even your own children. They paint you as the crazy one, the unstable one, the cold one, the selfish one, or the ungrateful one. They flip the narrative so convincingly that even people who have known you for many years start looking at you with confusion and doubt. And here is what most people who go through this never fully grasp. The smear campaign is not really an attack on your reputation. It is an attempt to rebuild the cage around you. Because if they can successfully convince the world that you are the problem, then maybe, just maybe, they can convince you of that same lie. The smear campaign is ultimately just the desperate, howling roar of a predator who has finally lost its prey. If any of this is resonating with you, if this is reaching something deep inside you, please follow this channel right now, because everything you are about to hear is going to help you take back what was taken from you. Drop one word in the comments below, just one word, awake. That way I know you are still with me, because this next part is where the truth becomes impossible to ignore. Most people never realize that emotional independence is the single most threatening force in a narcissist's life. Not money, not status, not even the direct threat of you leaving them. Emotional independence is the key. The moment you stop requiring their approval, their validation, their attention, or their permission to feel okay about yourself, you have effectively cut the cord they were feeding through. And a narcissist without a consistent feeding source becomes a profoundly unstable creature. That is why they often become more aggressive rather than less when you start your journey of healing. Because in their mind, your healing is their starvation. Your peace is their famine. Your growing self-respect is their ultimate exile. They do not want you to be well. They want you to remain dependent. They want you to stay reactive to their whims. The healthier you become, the more dangerous you are to the version of you that they built inside their own mind. Pay close attention here, because this part also changes everything. Boundaries are not meant to be walls. Boundaries are actually mirrors, and a narcissist cannot stand to look at mirrors. Every time you set a boundary, no matter how gently you state it, you force them to see themselves clearly. You force them to confront the reality that you possess a self, a soul, and a center that exists entirely outside of them and was never theirs to command. That is unbearable for them because in their internal world, you were never really a separate person to begin with. You existed primarily as a function, a source of supply, a source of admiration, and a source of emotional regulation for them. And when that function suddenly says no, and when that function starts living a life of its own, the narcissist feels something akin to a betrayal of massive proportions. They feel as though a vital part of their own reality has been stolen, even though that part was never rightfully theirs to begin with. By reclaiming your own life, you are reclaiming the truth of your own existence, and that is a victory that no manipulation can ever truly reverse. That is the primary reason why they react to boundaries the same way most people react to physical violence. To them, a boundary feels exactly like an act of aggression. Your refusal to engage is the destruction of their entire, carefully constructed universe. Here is the part that hardly anyone ever talks about. Underneath every narcissistic behavior, underneath every insult, every silent treatment, every guilt trip, every lie, every smear, and every sudden burst of rage, there is one single emotion at the core of it all. It is fear. The narcissist is afraid, constantly and perpetually. Underneath that mask, they live in a state of ongoing psychological dread. They feel the dread of being exposed. They feel the dread of being truly seen for who they are. They feel the dread of being ordinary. They feel the dread of being abandoned by those they rely on. They feel the dread of realizing that the self they built is actually hollow inside. The only way they know how to manage that crushing dread is to push it outward, to manipulate someone else into carrying it for them. For years, that person was you. The reason your healing process terrifies them so much is because the moment you put down the burden of fear they handed you, they have no other choice but to feel it themselves. And they would rather attempt to destroy you than face that internal void. What happens next reveals the ultimate truth. Once you understand this, you start to view every single behavior of the narcissist in a completely new light. Their rage is not a sign of strength, it is a sign of panic. Their silence is not a form of power, it is a punishment born out of deep-seated fear. The way they shift the blame is not an expression of confidence, it is a desperate, frantic attempt to keep their mask glued to their face. The smear campaign is not a display of real influence. It is the sound of someone losing their grip on reality entirely. Suddenly, the giant you were once so afraid of starts to look like exactly what they have always been, a frightened, small person screaming inside a costume. Once you see that clearly, you cannot unsee it. And once you cannot unsee it, you can no longer be controlled by it. But here is where the reality gets even darker. The narcissist's deepest, most profound fear is not you leaving them. It is you becoming someone they can no longer recognize. The version of you they pretended to love was the version that desperately needed them. They loved the version that constantly doubted itself, the version that apologized far too quickly, the version that gave too much, the version that forgave far too easily, and the version that stayed far too long. When you transform into someone who knows their own worth, someone who walks through life calmly, speaks clearly, sets boundaries without feeling a hint of guilt, and chooses peace over chaos, you become a total stranger to them. Strangers cannot be manipulated using old wounds, because those old wounds belong to the old versions of you. The new you has completely rewritten the rules, and the narcissist simply cannot read this new language. This is exactly why your healing journey is the greatest threat a narcissist will ever face. It is not about revenge, it is not about exposure, and it is not even about the act of abandonment. It is about your healing. Revenge can be twisted by them into a story about your cruelty. Exposure can be reframed by them as evidence of your bitterness. Abandonment can be rewritten as their own righteous freedom from you. But true healing cannot be touched. Healing cannot be spun into a different narrative. Healing cannot be argued with. A healed person is like a sealed door. A healed person does not engage, does not chase, does not beg, does not explain their actions, and does not perform for the approval of others. A healed person simply lives. And in that quiet, steady living, the narcissist sees something they can never have and can never become. Nothing in this world haunts a narcissist more than watching the person they tried to destroy walk calmly into a life of peace that they themselves are entirely incapable of building. Pay close attention here, because this part changes everything. Self-respect is the most quiet, most devastating weapon you will ever own. I am not talking about loud, performative self-respect. I mean quiet, internal self-respect. It is the kind of strength that does not need to be announced to the world. It is the kind of integrity that simply will not bend under pressure. When you genuinely respect yourself, manipulation has no surface left to grip onto. Guilt trips will slide right off you. Gaslighting does not take root in your mind because you trust your own perception of reality far more than their version of it. Flattery does not move you because your self-worth no longer needs to be borrowed from someone else's hollow words. Threats do not shake you because you have already lost the fear of losing the very thing that was hurting you in the first place. Self-respect makes you unreachable in all the places the narcissist used to walk freely. Here is what no one ever told you. You were not weak for being manipulated. You were open. You were trusting. You were capable of loving in a world that taught you to expect love in return. The narcissist did not target you because you were broken. They targeted you because you were luminous. They chose you because you possessed something they could never generate on their own. You had warmth, depth, empathy, loyalty, and a soul that could actually feel things deeply. They came to you not to share, but to take, because they could never create the light you already carried. The day you truly understand that, the day you stop seeing yourself as the victim of their cleverness and start seeing yourself as the true source of the light they were trying to steal, something inside you shifts permanently. You stop grieving the relationship. You start grieving the lost years, and then, slowly, you stop grieving altogether. You reach a point where you realize you were never the one who lost. You were the one who survived. So, when you see a narcissist suddenly raging over nothing, suddenly withdrawing into a cold silence, suddenly rewriting every story to make you the villain, suddenly running to others to paint you as unstable, or suddenly trying to love bomb you out of nowhere after weeks of cruelty, do not see chaos. Instead, see a confession. See an entire psychology breaking down right in front of your eyes. See the objective truth that they are afraid of you. They are afraid of the version of you that finally woke up, and they are afraid of the version of you that finally stopped flinching at their presence. That version of you is not someone they can manipulate anymore. That version of you is someone they are forced to flee from. And the moment they do, you will know, perhaps for the first time in many years, that the power was never really theirs to begin with. It was always yours. They just borrowed it from you under false pretenses, and the lease on that power has finally run out. You do not need to confront them. You do not need to expose their lies to the world. You do not need to win an argument because they will never allow you to win. You only need to keep healing, keep growing, and keep standing in the quiet, unshakable truth of who you really are. Every day you choose yourself, every day you honor your own peace, and every day you refuse to shrink to accommodate them, you are doing something far more powerful than any act of revenge could ever achieve. You are becoming the one thing a narcissist can never be. You are becoming free. Truly, deeply, and soulfully free. And freedom, once it has been tasted, can never be unlearned. If this message reached you, if even one single sentence landed somewhere deep inside your heart, do not let this moment pass without honoring it. Follow this channel, like this video, and leave a comment sharing one word that describes exactly how you feel right now. Your healing is not a private, insignificant event. It is a quiet revolution. Keep choosing yourself, because the version of you waiting on the other side of this healing is someone the old you would not even recognize. And that version of you is much closer than you think. Follow, breathe, and step fully into your own power. The world has been waiting for you to come home to yourself.